Sorry, my voice is a little cranky, but I will use it nonetheless. My name is Esther. I am faculty member, DASTA. I teach psychology and I can see a few of my students here. So I'm happy about that. I need to apologize. I wasn't in for the last meeting, but I'm here today. Quickly, I was challenged by our HOD to do this, but also the students, like in the chat, in the WhatsApp group. I would say that I'm proud of our students because I have seen the way they've pushed. I'm seeing some of them here, and you have inspired me to actually take this up. Sometimes when we're busy and we have other things we're doing, we might be lazy, you know, but I feel like I'm in a good space.
Sorry, Madam Esther, you're breaking.
Oh.
Yeah, I'm not sure why. Maybe try again.
So I had just said that I have been encouraged a lot by our students to do this. Sometimes we can be lazy, you know, or maybe have a lot of work and there's such little time. But DASTA students and specifically our department, I am so blessed to be part of this because of you and our HOD as well. So I did 2 modules and again, we are here to learn. So I'm not sure which one is module 1, which one is module 2. But I did human rights, mental health and disability, and I've done legal capacity and the right to decide. So I'll speak about those ones, but I stand to be guided. I am teachable. And for a few minutes, the human rights, mental health and disability module for me was very challenging. Those articles are many, but I will also say the lessons are also many and just enlightening. I've been made aware of violations all over. You know, sometimes we're just doing life and we can be casual about some things. But as I was doing my readings and listening to the videos, I think Karokama needs to mute. Just the awareness of the violations all over in different fields, professional fields within our country. And this just brings to us the consciousness of the need to create awareness, especially for us in the mental health space. It's important that we create awareness. If we will be the ones to run with this as an agenda, sawa, let's do it. I think it's important. And I have a question for us, just a reflection question. Is it that we are aware, but we just disregard? Are we aware of the human rights? Are we aware that there is actual disability and the violations going on, and we are careless about it? Do we know the human rights and we just choose not to follow? And then another thing that I picked from that, and that was intriguing to me, anyone who's done this and they know about the models, the 4 models, the old and the new, it was kind of obvious to me that the medical and the charity models of disability, though they are old, they are quite alive in our country. And that begs the question, so when do we move over to the new models, the ones that actually take care of people with disability? About the second model, I hope I'm still answering the question. The one I did, legal capacity and the right to decide.
Okay. Sorry, just clarifying that the conversation today is on human rights, disability, and mental health. But definitely the insights on legal capacity will help. I think most of our participants haven't done it, but it's good to have a head start. So please do share on legal capacity as well. Thank you.
Yeah. Okay. Asante. For them that have done and them that haven't, for me, equal recognition before the law, I think that needs to be highlighted in bold because of how when you go through it, it's obvious that people with disability have no freedoms, they have no choice. And that made me wonder, do they then have hope? Do they then have life? Do we still consider them to be people? If we speak or do life as though they don't have a voice, we need to speak for them. They don't have a choice, we need to make choices for them. Then what makes a person if they cannot speak? I think for me, what these modules have done is challenge me really, and think about our practice as psychologists, as clinicians, as researchers, people in academia. We are at a particular vantage point in society. We have a voice, we can use it to actually change the landscape. So what I picked overall is a challenge and an action to do this, speak about this. That's it from me for now.
Okay. Excellent insights, Esther. Yes, we will have a part 2 of this panel. I especially love the quote that we do have a voice and we need to use it. That is very encouraging. And thank you for going ahead of us to legal capacity. Insights from that are helpful as well. So next we will have Tabitha Wamushie. She's a graduate student. Tabitha, we'd love to hear your general insights on your quality rights experience, and more so how you were able to finish quality rights in 2 days. And also give us your insights on module 1 and 2. I remember you shared very exciting insights last week. So over to you, Tabitha. Thank you.
Good morning. I hope you can hear me.
Yes, we can. Please carry on.
Okay.
Yes, we can.
Okay, sure. Sorry, I will not be able to share my video. But I'm good. I'm doing well. Hoping I will repeat what I said, but hoping it will not give you bore you for repeating now and then. When I was doing that, the human right, I was a bit late. That is, I saw people saying that they are doing and a week has gone. So on Saturday, I decided, well, I've not done this and we are meeting next week. So how will I be able, you feel less advantaged when everyone has read things and you cannot share, you cannot understand what they are going through. So I went, I logged in and started doing like the way our lecturer has said that she doesn't know if it's module 1 or module 2 or whichever module. That is the same situation I had. I was just doing the question, going to another one. And when you go to the dashboard, they've not told you which modules. What is just, there are those 6 square circles and everything. So I was doing as I continue. I did a part of it on Saturday. Then on Tuesday, I was in a function which the guest of honor delayed so much. So when the guest of honor delayed, I did not know what to do. The best thing about this course is that you can do it anywhere or everywhere you are, when you're bored in a mat, when you can do it. So there was that function, so I decided to open and start doing. In fact, one of the people we were with was asking me, what are you doing? So I shared the link and she said that she will do the course. So when I did a part of it, then that day, because it was a ceremony that was to finish early, when I went home, I wasn't working the whole day, like at 5. So I sat down and started doing it. And as I was doing it, then I saw the questioner not coming anymore. There is no other lesson. Then when I was reading around, I saw a reward. So I was wondering. So I clicked on the reward. I saw the certificate. I was like, okay. Then when I read the certificate, is you finished all the modules. I'm like, okay. But it was good. I was excited. I've learned so much about human rights. For module 1 and 2, I've read, I've learned about the human rights. You know, before I didn't know what is human right. We know them, we've heard about them, but if each and everyone can be told to mention one, or to say how to mention how many they are in Kenya, or how we can't. We just know about the activists who usually come and do some other things, dramas and everything. Those are the people we know, but we don't know the human rights. Now that I've learned they are 30, it's good also, even if I've done the course, it's good to go back to them and maybe understand them better and how I can apply them to other people. Then the one thing that I learned is that me knowing about human rights is good for me so much, because I'll be able to defend myself from my rights being violated. But I'm asking about those people who are vulnerable and they don't know their rights. And I'm not there to protect them, because when I'm there, I can just say, no, you're not doing the right thing. But what if teaching them and they know that this is my right? I have the right to speak up. I have the right to be treated the right way. I have the right to privacy. I have the right to deciding on my medication and everything. If these people who are vulnerable, and people who are vulnerable is not maybe people in the mental health institution, maybe people we are seeing as if they are vulnerable. I know each and every person, your sister, your brother, people in the church, they can go through these problems and they don't know these human rights. And we who have learned this, we know them. What are we doing with this knowledge? Are we just staying with it and just staying with it? And we know it, and that's all? I think even teaching other people in that chama, just tell them about human rights in the church and everything. There are some people who have a platform where stand and teach people. Let us just teach people about human rights and how they can use it and how they can speak up when they are violated. And that can really help us spreading and making people to uphold these rights everywhere they go, because knowledge is power. When people know they are able to protect them, they have the power to speak up, and people will see, oh, this person knows I'm not doing the right thing. So it's important. I thought knowing them and spreading them around is important. Yeah, that's what I have for now.
Okay, thank you, Tabitha. Those are excellent insights shared. We appreciate that contribution. I'd like to remind our participants to comment on the chat, comment on what is being said. Let us know your general quality rights experience. We would want this to be interactive. So apart from saying you can't hear me, I'd like to see more on the chat regarding your QR experience and also responding to what our panelists are sharing. In the next, next we will look into how is it that we can use this information in academia and research, and also how we can use this in our professional practice in our communities. I know some of us are already practicing within the mental health profession. For some, it is a requirement to do something for the practice that you
Charity,
have
you're making. I don't know if I'm
in your studies. Okay. Our takeouts in terms of how we can use this information in academia and research, and how we can use it in our professional practice. So I'd like to ask Esther to start. But I was also saying, for our participants on the chat, kindly share your takeouts, both for the previous panel questions and how you can use this in research, academia, and your profession. So Madam Esther, please share.
Thank you, Charity. I would want to add something to what my other panelist has said, my colleague, probably my student. I think these modules, there is a lot of content. And there was a feeling, those two hats at the top, you don't want to lose any. And my hope is that as we are reading, because that can, it's an encouragement of sorts, it's a motivation of sorts, but I hope that as we read and listen in, we actually internalize, so that we can take this material out there to the work that we do. I'm hoping that a lot more faculty can join, especially just to answer, how do we incorporate this in academia, research, and clinical work? I chose to combine that partly because I'm in all those three spaces. And I assume that the students that we have are also working towards going into research and academia as well, and probably the clinical work too. First and foremost, those of us who are here, we've already exposed ourselves to this information. Can we start from where we are and start conversations around us and inspire other people to join these kinds of training? For academic purposes, at this point, I'm thinking it may be a slow process, but a curriculum review may be important. But it needs to start. We need to start somewhere. We can inspire curriculum, inspire forums within the university, we have these kinds of conversations. And yes, it might be slow. The uptake might be slow. It's okay. The point is to begin. And over time, it will catch up, because if we don't move the way we are, we're not too many, but we're not too few either. If we don't move and put an inspiration to other people, and I liked what Tabitha said, that someone saw me do it and I sent them the link. Maybe we need to do that too. So like for me, because I sit with faculty, I could encourage my faculty colleagues to join in, ask those questions. Have you done this? Do you know about this? Swahili, I would say tuambukizane. Okay. And then, like I had said, I think we need to invite all persons within the space of academia, research, and clinical work to forums like this, just to sit in and listen. Even if they haven't done the module, they can come and listen, and maybe they can be inspired to actually do it. And we need also, I think, if we're not yet able to bring it to class, to teach it in class, can we get people out of class and research spaces and clinical spaces to attend forums like this, do modules like this, which would be like in school we have common units. It could be taken like that. The idea for me is expose people as much as possible. We can have open forums, we can have general forums, we can have dedicated time within the semester to actually talk about this as a department and sensitize people so that they can, like they can catch it and come and do it. I also think we need to include these things in the ethics classes. I think what we teach in ethics is good, but can we also add this? I mean, there is no harm in doing that. And then whatever it is that we purpose to do as academic people, research and clinical work, whatever it is that you do concerning human rights, any lessons that you have, once you inspire other people, go back and refresh, go back and retrain, and do this on repeat until it becomes part of us, because the landscape has to change. Whatever we have out there is not okay. It needs to change. So because we have caught it, we can inspire, we can speak, we can speak in places where policy is being formulated and have all these things incorporated, and then do it on repeat. Thanks, Jai.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Esther. That has been quite a refreshing insight. And I'd like to respond on the issue of the curriculum integration. It's something that we had discussed as we were starting the course, but we left it at, because the faculty have also not done the course, that we will have this conversation as we approach completion. So one thing we had said is putting it in required learning is sort of a lower hanging fruit. And then after that, seeing how it can be integrated in the curriculum. It seemed something easier to do in terms of the curriculum for psychology students, but I look forward to having you as part of that conversation as towards the end of the course. So I'd like to the other thing I wanted to clarify is also on the modules. Originally, this course was intended and is intended for self-learning and self-completion. However, most people, especially in low and income countries, especially in Africa, have not been able to complete. So 80 to 90% started but did not complete. Chris Limo, who's here with us, and I were part of those numbers. So that's why we started a cohort model. We had many requests to do this in groups. So the links that we had sent in terms of how to access the models are the general ones, and generally you can really start with any module. However, for purposes of discussion, we broke it into module 1 and 2, module 3 and 4, module 5 and 6. So if you have followed when you follow the messages on the chat, we were clarifying that it is human rights, mental health and disability that we would be discussing today. So for purposes of the discussion, we are going 1 and 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, but generally for the course, people can start anywhere. I'd like to sample some comments. So we have Maureen Awor, who has mentioned that her experience so far has been great. She's learning a lot. However, it's taking more time than the allocated time for her to complete. Struggled with the case studies a bit, especially the ones for Sandeep, where they are asking if the right was protected, fulfilled or respected. I believe that the following modules that we are doing are part of making that clear. This is an introduction so far. Thank you so much for that comment, Maureen. We also have Magdalene, who says she has enjoyed reading through module 1 and 2. She's not able to contribute verbally today because she's at the workplace, but she has joined us. Thank you, Magdalene. Clementine says the module has challenged them to practice what they preach as a helper, which is compassion all the time. But do we practice and apply the same when it comes to human rights for the mentally ill? That's a very, very valid question. I think Esther also mentioned the same, and Tabitha also asked, yes, the rights are there, but are they practiced? Do we still have the charity model while we have the medical model? Yes, and the reason it is important to discuss this is, like I mentioned on the chat, human rights are not black and white. They are unalienable in terms of each of us has the same human rights. But when it comes to practicing them, or how we interpret and actualize them, sometimes that changes. And so that's why we're having this discussion. Jane Bithi says this course has been an eye-opener. She has learned new things about rights. She's looked around with new eyes. That's amazing. Seeing the violations around her. Her challenge is spreading the news for now. Clementine says, very true. If you do this course, you have no choice but to become a real advocate for human rights. Sifa Kingori says the two models serve as a wake-up call of sorts. It served as a reminder to humanize people with psychosocial, intellectual, and cognitive disabilities, seeing them as people. Thank you, Sifa, and everyone else for the comments. I'd like to request Tabitha to share her insights in terms of academia and research and professional practice. And I think she can also relate to the practice that she has had at Mathare. So Tabitha, please share. And then if there are any other comments, we will go through them. If you have any questions, please let us know. So Tabitha, please share. And then now we'll draw the meeting to a close. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. I'm a nurse by profession, and I've worked in Mathare in my practicum, and sometimes patients are brought, human rights are there, and maybe people know, but it's okay to violate human right. For some people say it's okay, even the government and everyone, if they see you tying a person who is psychotic, they will help you also to tie that person. It's not wrong. That is what they think. Some of these patients, when they are tied and everyone think that it's there, they should be tied. And sometimes when they come to the hospital, instead of even you treat both the physical injuries that they have sustained during that time and even the psychotic problem. And that also traumatized them psychologically, because maybe they were tied so tight with something that is hurting them. You start dressing them, even sometimes it's not fair. But there are some patients who don't have insight. They can harm themselves, they can hurt others. So for them, yes, they can be restrained, but in a dignified manner that will not harm them, because you don't want to bring a patient with a mental disorder and then that patient come up with a physical problem because maybe you've restrained them so much. And this does not only happen to psychiatric patients only. Even I've worked in medical wards where patients get meningitis, and when they suffer from meningitis, they don't have insight. They're screaming, they want to hurt themselves. And I saw in the medical wards I think they think about the dignity of this patient because they restrain them, but in a way that is a bit humanized. I think they're thinking about this patient can hurt, they can fall. This patient, if we restrain them with this one, they can get hurt. But in the other side, the psychiatry is a bit gross, and people who bring them, sometimes they don't think about now the physical injury. They're thinking that this person will injure others, which is really not good. And I think spreading the news and making sure, even if this patient is sick and cannot be able to take care of themselves, please let's try to protect them. Let's not bring a patient with a psychotic disorder and then this patient has a wound that you're dressing. It's not fair. So it's not good. Then also, I like what Charity said last time, is that people go to those extent and severity of being restrained because they are not identified early, treated early. And when the condition is identified early, they will not have gone to that loss of insight and wanting to harm others and themselves. Now that early identification is brought about maybe by stigma and discrimination, and they think that huyu ni wazimu tu and everything, and all they are pretending. So they wait for the condition to be so bad. When the patient is now becoming very violent, that is when they are taking the patient to the hospital. But they had seen some problems. So even giving the early signs of symptoms of mental disorders to people so that they can identify and take this patient to hospital early is important. Yeah, in academia is I'm also agreeing with the lecturer. She has said that we make it a part of the unit so that we get it as a unit so that everyone can learn. When you're going to those practicum and you have learned about these, there are sometimes in other practicum places we are given chances to give health talks. So if a student know about this, can take it as a way of teaching even the qualified in that hospital, because you already have the knowledge, that is a very good, and then you teach them about that. And also even health talk in waiting bays. We, as nurses, we usually go to the waiting bay and teach the client. So even that one, if I know and I'm a student of Daystar, I will go and give a health talk or a seminar about it, and that one can awaken and enhance these rights to be upheld everywhere we go. In research, I would say what Charity said last time is that when you include people in research, there's a saying that it says that there is nothing about us without us. So you want to take something about us, then you get a research, you get very good results, but you don't come back to us. How will it help us? So it is very important to disseminate these messages to people who are participating so that they can feel the benefit. But sometimes you do very good research, but they are there in the books, and they are the people who did, they can see the advantage. They can see why they were to sit down there and answer questions. And dissemination is very important in research. And also, I thought even consent and thinking about the mentally ill, do they have are they to be made decision for, or are they to make decision for themselves? Do we see that this person cannot make decision for themselves, so someone else will make decisions for them? Do we inform them and they give an informed consent so that they can agree to be a part of that research? I think even ethical consideration, we should add all that so that we can, it's in the ethical consideration research, and it can really help. I think that's all I have.
Okay, thank you. And that's a lot. That's a lot to think through. I think those are excellent contributions. Thank you, Tabitha. Yes, I agree with you. I had shared that, especially during COVID, we were involved in so many researches. But at the end of the day, we stopped doing them because we don't get to understand why is the research there, and after we have participated, how is it being used? If it was about employment, how many people have gotten employment as a result of us participating? And so many surveys are not getting people to feel because of previous experiences where we haven't quite seen the benefit of that. So I have some general comments to make before we close.
Can I just say one thing for Charity before you?
Yes, sure. Please do.
Hi, good morning. I'm Chris Limo. I'm a graduate student at Daystar. But my claim to the field is really around addiction intervention. And I liked what you said about, the rights being, not black and white. So I'm looking forward to completing the course to see how that quality rights training, does vis-a-vis the way we do addiction intervention, because a lot of time there's involuntary admission into rehabs, and some of them do translate into success stories, but a lot of them don't. And so it's still, it would be interesting to see, how the end of the course, translates that. And even in the context of research, as in fact, I've just seen a finding, especially from, when Tabitha was sharing, because I'm also defending my thesis on Monday. I'm having my final defense. But one of the findings that I found from my research is that 75% of the respondents who were involuntarily admitted it did not work for the 75. It did not work. Yet we continue and believe in especially because I was a bit conflicted about the part where the patient, we say the patient has a right to decide their treatment. Mm-hmm. And we're saying addiction is a disease of denial. So yes. How do the two meet? How does a denial meet the need to get well? So that would be an interesting thing to see how to interpret this training into, qua ground. Okay. Yeah, so, and just that finding, maybe I can put it in my presentation for Monday, that it's interesting that everybody who was admitted involuntarily relapsed or didn't even get well. But the one who was given a choice, the 25% that were given a choice, actually chose not to be admitted and chose to do it another way, and it worked for the last 15 years. So yeah, maybe there's something there after all, from this quality rights training. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for those insights, Chris, and I'm glad you've brought that up. Because as much as people sometimes do quality rights from any module, it does help to start with the basics, of what is human rights and so on, even as we look into those conversations of involuntary admission. So just to respond to that, persons with, let me say psychiatric conditions, because the World Health Organization classifies mental, neurological, substance use conditions together, because they are inseparable. They are like the chicken and the egg. I mean, you can develop a substance use condition as a result of mental illness, or mental illness, puts us at higher risk of substance use conditions. Neurology is brain conditions, which, I mean, psychiatry is about the mind, neurology is about the brain. But bipolar, for example, the symptoms of bipolar are similar to the symptoms of someone who has a brain disease or has had a brain injury. And so many of us, I mean, I was lucky to have had an MRI to confirm that, and even a thyroid test, because hypothyroid has the same symptoms. And so there are many people who are not done for these tests, and they could be treated as psychiatric patients while they're neurological. But what I wanted to say is that for all of us, substance use, psychiatric and neurological, we do have many patients who are taken in involuntarily. And as Tabitha had said, because of late intervention. So you find the more severe someone is, the more they are not in a position to make the decision for themselves. And sometimes it's a decision of, okay, we either take you in, even without your consent, to save your life, because sometimes people are actually doing things that are risking their lives. And that is why human rights are not black and white. So what I would say, Chris, is that in terms of rights, or in terms of law and legislation, then when we have a human right, it is the same for all of us and it doesn't change. But the actualization is what changes. I had mentioned in the last meeting that I'll send a link on a blog I had done on human rights and my many disillusionments, even as I have realized that those who tie these people, usually it's not out of malice, but because they have become violent as a result of not being treated. If it is seclusion, then someone is put in because they were brought in so severe and they're not able to, because of their illness, they are not able to think straight and are hurting other patients and hurting themselves. And so that means that even when it is a right, sometimes because of lack of either technical or financial capacity, or even the awareness of rights. Remember that these are rights that as low and middle income countries, we are learning about in the last 5 years. Some of what the first world countries had started addressing this 20 years ago. In public facilities, what we have is what we were left with 100 years ago, including the state of our buildings, which are literally 100 years old. And so that means that countries, depending on the awareness and the financial and technical capacity, then will be able to address it in different ways. So how someone is, dealt with when suicidal, for example, in Kenya, would be very different from the UK, because in the UK, they'll have suicide hold for 72 hours, which we do not have here in Kenya. And like I mentioned last time, we have 33 counties that do not even have a psychiatric unit for any other purpose, making it difficult to do things like that. So the answer, Chris, for your presentation on Monday is that it depends on what a facility is able to do. Probably a private facility like Chiromo would be able to have more capacity to enhance alternatives to human rights violation, say, if you're comparing with Mathare or Port Reitz in Mombasa or Gilgil, where the resources are not as much and where the illnesses are more severe. So the answer, we cannot have one answer for everyone. You can contextualize in one place, probably like one facility that you worked with, a rehab, and give that example. But it cannot be the same in all rehabs or for all institutions. The other thing I wanted to mention is that these rights are just one of the many rights that we have under the UN Convention of the Rights of Persons with Disabilities, which has been integrated in our Disability Act. However, we also have our Constitution, which is supreme over the other laws in Kenya. We have our Mental Health Amendment Act that was amended just before elections last year. We have our Kenya Mental Health Policy. We have our National Suicide Prevention Strategy that we launched last year. And all these laws affect us positively or negatively. So this is to say that this is just the beginning of rights. Actually, just as Mwalimu was saying, there are so many rights in the articles. By the way, in each of the modules that we have, the articles are repeated over and over because they are the same ones. But like when we were learning, for us, we did all the 50 articles. So we are very fortunate that WHO has just picked the 5 most, relevant or the most violated rights within the CRPD. So this is to say these are not the only rights. So even when, for example, you find yourself in a position where you need to, like Chris is saying, justify in your thesis, or even a situation where you're going to court to fight the rights for the rights of someone, then you need to, either work with a lawyer or be aware of other laws that could be clashing with probably what is in the UN Convention. So it's just to mention that these are not the only rights. So I'd mentioned this on Wednesday, but I'll also mention it today that I will share some links, to the National Task Force report, to the Kenya Mental Health Policy, and other, rights documents that we have. I encourage that you start with the Kenya Mental Health Policy because it is the easiest to understand, it is the shortest, it is the simplest, and most of those are then reflected in other documents that we have. Sorry, I switched off my video because I have the phone close to my mouth when you said that you're not able to hear me. The other thing is in research and academia, yes, it is important to have consent. And the issue of consent is also tricky with people living with mental health conditions. For example, like at Mathare, we don't allow photography. Reason being, for privacy issues, and also because even if you are to ask all patients, do you consent for a photo? There's the issue of unsound mind, the very uncomfortable term of unsound mind, because then someone could be saying yes, but they are not mentally well. Are they saying that in the right capacity? We do have people who have legal guardianship over patients. Legal guardianship means any decision that is made by the legal guardian, which is one of the reasons for quality rights, because we are moving from legal guardianship to supported decision making. And I think we will be discussing that in a later module. So that means if this person has consented, but legally the caregiver has legal guardianship by the court, then they can take you to court. So it is to say that issues of consent with persons with mental health conditions are more, controversial or difficult than others. And probably the last thing I want to say is that the next modules we'll be doing our legal capacity, which I'm happy that Esther has taken us through some of that to prepare our minds for those who've not started, but also violence, abuse, and coercion. These two are probably the most controversial modules that we have in this course. And I'm glad Chris has preempted how that is within substance use. We have had sessions where we have people with elderly homes, people with dementia, children with mental health conditions, children with intellectual disabilities, including autism and so on. And it is always interesting to see how, people are looking at these rights or are interpreting or actualizing these rights in those different circumstances. So this is a preempt to say that the next module is a difficult one, is a controversial one, but I encourage you to engage with all the content that is there. I will be sharing the blog that I did on human rights that has a lot of disillusionment. I will also share the experience of Nico Sir, a friend of mine who is in one of our patient peer support groups. He should I say, experienced or endured human rights violations under the Father Pesa program. You might remember something that was on the news on Father Pesa Holy Ghost Coptic Church in Kisumu, where they tie patients with with mental health conditions for prayer, which is more common than most Kenyans want to accept. So I'll share that. It is an uncomfortable video, but please listen to it. Listen also to the different materials that we have in the module 2 and 3. You might need to go through it twice because there are things that you will grapple with and struggle with. And so it is to say that our next conversation will be a difficult one, will be an uncomfortable one, but a very necessary one. And I look forward also to Chris hearing your insights in terms of violence, abuse, and coercion in matters of use. So thank you everyone for joining us. We are a little past time, it's after 10. Thank you for joining us. Thank you to our panelists for sharing very important contributions and insights. Felix has sent an apology. He's not been able to join us today, but he joined us on Wednesday and he shared very good insights as well. Thank you to all our participants for joining and making time for this. Let us continue the conversation on the chat. Feel free to share the same takeouts on the group. I'd really encourage us to have active conversations on the group. The group is not for updates for the next meeting alone. No, even these comments on the rehabs and so on, let's have them on the group so that everyone is thinking through and everyone is participating in the progress. I'm also very concerned that the number today, I think the highest number so far has been 27, and on Wednesday we had 37. And so I want to encourage us to, for the people who have joined, just reach out, see what the challenge is, because our target was to do this with 250 students, which as an institution, we believe is possible because we have higher numbers here. So please do reach out to someone. We'll also be checking with faculty how it is we can get the numbers back up, because we had determined the targets together. So thank you for making time to join us. We look forward to the next conversation in 2 weeks. I'll ask you to continue with the conversation. I will be away. I'll be speaking at the World Health Summit in Berlin on 15th to 17th. So I'll be traveling on 14th, back on 18th. So I may not be very active on the group, but I request you to keep the conversation alive. Even where you just have a random question, just put it on the group and let's all participate. Enjoy your weekend. Yes, sorry.
There's something for us, those people who we have finished,
Yes.
Someone can forget what you have learned in that training. There is revision, and there are some questions which are for revision, so that one can really make you remember what you learned. Yeah, that's what I want.
Yeah, that is true. That's a very good point. Thank you for that, Tabitha. And I'm happy to see that people mentioned they are writing down this content, and so that means like Tabitha, you can be a boss. You finished your content, but before the conversation, you can go through those notes for purposes of the conversation and revision, as you have talked about. So thank you again, everyone, for participating. I'm very proud of you for what you've done for this course already. Asking for your help too. Let's mobilize people and finish as a good number. Enjoy your weekend, and let's continue the conversation on the group. Yes,
excuse me, Charity, before you leave, I have a question.
Okay.
It's a maybe I would like to have more insight. Thank you. This is Damaris.
Okay.
Maybe this is concerning the schools, because when you talk about the human rights, they are cutting across, particularly when it comes also to seeking health services to different institutions. And I've seen this and I've heard it being a challenge previously with some parents, that where students have been sent away from school, they need to be done toxicology.
Yes.
The institution requires specific places for the parent, the toxicology to be done at particular places for the parent. And when these parents particularly come to you as a service provider, they say, honestly, where I've been sent, I don't have money. I don't have that amount of money that I'm supposed to pay. Then the discrepancy in this is that the school requires this parent to get psychological support from a public health facility, but they don't acknowledge when the toxicology is done at the health facility, the public health facility, until it is done in that facility where the institution has recommended. And for me, I feel like also the rights of the parents are being violated, and those students, I don't know how we need to go about it. And as an advocate of the health right for the schools, because I know you are interacting with so many other stakeholders, I feel this is something that you need to pass over to the institutions that are concerned with education.
Yes.
Because I feel maybe the teachers who are sending to that particular place, they have a take in it. But I don't know how we should go on, because I feel this is a right that is being violated for the parent and for the student, of course. Thank you.
Okay. That is excellent insight. Sorry, I would have left that out. I was worried about the time, but if anyone else has a question, please raise your hand or put in the chat as I respond. And I also open it up for other people to respond on this issue. Now, I have been called by several patients in the past. For most of them, it is for students in high school, and especially after the long COVID break. We had a lot of teenagers. I think even NACADA sent an alarm that there was a very big increase in substance use for teenagers. And they also talked of, because most teenagers, especially for alcoholism, start drinking at home, where parents drink at home. So there was that issue that was raised. So as a result of that, we had many, parents who took back their children after the long COVID break, and they were sent back. They were told, we can see, signs that your child is having withdrawal symptoms, and so we need you to go to a facility, like you have said, have the toxicology report, have at least this number of, it was not consistent, but there are those who are saying have at least 5 sessions of counseling, etc., that had to be documented back to the school. So that is what I have engaged in. So it's interesting to hear that it has been in campus as well. So while supporting those parents, we had the same challenges because number one, like for example, I usually don't recommend Madare for under 18. And even Madare usually refer to Kenyatta that has a youth-specific mental health program. And so for those who are under 18, then that is where we've been sending them. And so we had some parents who, preferred that instead of going to a public facility because their children are under 18, that they go to a private one, which makes a lot of sense. But yes, the schools were not receiving we're not accepting that feedback from private facilities. So this is what I would say. That is not something that will, can be changed, in a week or two. However, we have a National Quality Rights Committee that is being reconvened next week. And one of the reasons for reconvening is that we want to include tertiary institutions, professional health associations, and other stakeholders like yourselves, so that you would be able to contribute to the committee on such issues. Because at the national level of the committee, which is convened by the Ministry of Health, but we will also be working with counties, it is easier to then reach legislators and other people to make that decision quickly. So engaging stakeholders as an institution may not be as fast as engaging through that National Quality Rights Committee, because the mandate is then quality rights and it should be addressing issues like that. So what I would request is that, please speak to Dr. Menecha about it, because we will be having a review session. And after we have the reconvening, because people were appointed to that committee in government, but we want now to co-opt members of stakeholders who we are engaging, including tertiary institutions, so that because we will be approaching DAYSTAR as an institution to join that. So I think that would be the most effective way, because I know there are many things that we have tried to engage in matters rights in terms of as individual stakeholders or as civil society or as even professional health associations, which have not been, which have taken a very long time and haven't been resolved. And one example is the Mental Health Act. We worked on the Mental Health Act, I think, for 5 years before it was able to be approved. So my recommendation is that we do this through the Quality Rights Committee. We now have finally a mental health board, a Kenya Mental Health Board that was appointed last year. And so as the QR committee, we will be engaging the board. So at that level, it becomes easier, a lot easier and faster to make such decisions. So please talk to Dr. Menecha. I'll reach out to him as well. And if there are any other issues, I think even Chris, your concerns on the rehab issue, you can mention to him as well, so that when we are discussing at the level of the Quality Rights Committee and engaging the Kenya Mental Health Board, we have those very important conversations. It will be faster and more effective to address it from there. If there's any question, please lift up your hand. Also, Damaris, I had missed your comments. So one was, thanks for this insight. If people with addiction challenges are violent, they can be admitted involuntarily to avoid causing more harm to others. Yes, that is the conversation that we're having. In terms of rights, it should be voluntary admission. I know even for the Mental Health Act, I served in the National Task Force on Mental Health, and one of the issues we were raising with the Act was this issue of involuntary admission. And so in the Mental Health Act, it does talk about voluntary admission. And I'll share the act. I'll share the act with you. It's not a short one, but one of the things it talks about is like having 72 hours re-examining consent after 72 hours and after 1 week and so on. So there is a gray area. So what I'm saying is, when you say they can be admitted involuntarily, it is being done, but it contravenes the international human rights. But what I was saying is, one of the things we've been telling WHO is, yes, we cannot contextualize the rights, but we need to contextualize the practice in Africa. Like, we cannot be said to be violating human rights while some of these things we've just learned now, we don't have the resources, for example, to ensure that people are coming in early for treatment. So that is why human rights are not black and white. The other comment is adolescent and children clinic on Wednesdays. Yes, we have an adolescent and children clinic. The focus has actually been on occupational therapy, especially for children with cerebral palsy. We do have occupational therapists at Mathare. So what I'm saying is, for mental health conditions, because we do have adolescents and children who get mental health conditions, they are usually referred to Kenyatta, but we do have occupational therapy. Another thing to note is that we, just like I said, because we put mental, neurological, and substance use conditions together, sometimes you find that a child has epilepsy, which is neurological, but it has led to bipolar in the same child. And so that, because of the two, and probably because of the occupational therapy, then Mathare would choose to treat them together. But when it is a mental health condition alone and someone can go to Kenyatta, it is advisable. So it is to say that, yeah, we have a lot to do. There's nothing that is, cast on stone, and people are dealing with this differently, but it is very important, especially for those who are mental health professionals in training and teaching mental health professionals and the faculty, to have this in mind, because very soon we will have people suing, because of things that are being done in rehabs and so on. And we want to ensure that we have the right information, we have educated ourselves so that we don't find ourselves in compromising situations as mental health professionals. So because of time, allow me to close for today, but let's continue the conversation on the chat. Damaris, I'd be very happy if you could, repeat these same comments on the group chat so that we have more people discussing it. For those who've commented, if you could go the extra mile and put those comments in the group chat. We want to have conversations with everyone, so that even the people who joined us on Wednesday can contribute to that, and we can hear examples from some facilities. So last comment, discrepancy comes when they recommend toxicology to be done in private facility, but counseling letter in public health facility. Yeah, I hear you. And it is different for different institutions. What they ask for sometimes differs. And so I believe this is what the DESTA one is talking about. We are very fortunate even at Mathare to have counseling. I mean, when for the first 3 years I was there, we didn't have, counseling. We have it now. In fact, now I think nine of them, their contracts are over. And so even just accessing counseling in public facilities has been a challenge. However, Nairobi County mental health unit has started about 40 facilities. I can share that document on the chat. Those facilities offer psychotherapy. It will show you, it's once a week in each clinic. So we have facilities like Lunga Lunga, Waithaka, Jericho, Kasarani, Kibera, Langata, Madaraka, Makadara. So at level 1 and 2 facilities, because we are pushing for mental health services to be available at the community health level. Mathare should be a last resort. Gilgil should be a last resort. Mama Lucy, which is level 5, and Mbagathi is part of that. So we want people to access at low level. So it is to say that for public facilities, it doesn't have to be Mathare in Nairobi, for example. I'll send that list of facilities. It still says NMS. They've not done a new one, but it moved from Nairobi Metropolitan Services to Nairobi County. And so those that are there, this list is from, I think 2-3 years ago, but they've added some facilities. We've been asking for a new list, but at least even for, when you're sending people to get letters from public facilities, you can also let them know about those facilities. Because like at Mathare, the line is usually very long, and you may find a facility that is closer to the students that you are sending. Toxicology, I do know of people in, I have a friend who went to a rehab and they were able to negotiate that she does only toxicology at the rehab and then outpatient counseling because that is what they could afford. So I think these things are discussable, but what we need to do is continue sharing experiences, because institutions and organizations and facilities do not necessarily have exactly the same approach to how they go about things, but institutions as well. I'll also check with the institutions we are engaging, like Amani Counseling Center, Strathmore, USIU, to see, what it is they require in this regard for substance use, the toxicology, and so on, so that we can compare. So thank you again, everyone, for joining us today. It's been an enriching conversation. We will have a very tough conversation next week, but please engage with the content. Study early so that you have time, because these two, we find people saying, I had to go through it 2 or 3 times. So the earlier you go through the content, the better. And I will be sending some links that you can also look at to discuss next time. So thank you. Enjoy your 2 weeks until we meet again. Please keep the conversation alive in the chat. Thank you for joining us today. Have a good weekend. Kwaheri.
Bye.